For those who don't know me, my name is Rabbi Esther Letterman, and I'm delighted to be here with all of you. You should be receiving bags, gifts for our next part of the time together, so just be patient as our staff pass those out. My job is to introduce you to our next speaker, Rabbi Adina Allen, founder and creative director of Jewish Studio Project. And I want to tell you why we believed Rabbi Allen was the right person to help kick off our gathering, and even more so why she is the right person after the trauma of October 7th and 8th and 9th. Jewish Studio Project cultivates creativity as a Jewish practice for spiritual connection and social transformation. And when many of us think of what we as a Reform movement do best, those two pillars often emerge: social transformation and spiritual connection. And this opening session is designed as an invitation to all of us into this sacred space of gathering. What kind of ancestors does the future need from us is one of the questions that has animated us as we planned for this gathering. We know that the future requires us to be creative and imaginative. And we knew that Rabbi Allen would be the perfect provocateur in helping us to develop these muscles as leaders of this movement. And then October 7th occurred, a searing moment of rupture and loss that we are all still facing. And when we called Rabbi Allen to talk this through, she understood what this moment needed, that even in this moment of crisis, we still must stay connected to our hearts and our spirits and our shared sense of humanity. She reminds us that the ancient wisdom of our faith contains lessons of how to face tragedy with hope and possibility. So it is my pleasure to welcome Rabbi Adina Allen. She is a spiritual leader, writer, and educator who grew up in an art studio where she learned firsthand the power of creativity for connecting to self and to the sacred. She's co-founder and creative director of Jewish Studio Project, an organization that is seeding a future in which every person is connected to their creativity as a force for healing, liberation, and social transformation. Based on the work of her mother, renowned art therapist Pat B. Allen, Adina developed the Jewish Studio Process, a methodology for unlocking creativity, which she has brought to thousands of activists, educators, artists, and clergy across the country. A national media contributor, popular speaker, and workshop leader, Adina's writing can be found in scholarly as well as mainstream publications and on her website. Her first book, The Place of All Possibility, A Torah of Creativity, will be published this spring by Ayin Press. Adina and her family live in Berkeley, California. When we invited her here, she did not expect to have to follow the second gentleman. So please give a very warm welcome to Rabbi Adina Allen.
I don't have a Secret Service entourage, but I do have gifts, so hopefully those will be well received. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Esther. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for warmly welcoming me. I'm grateful to be here at this very difficult and heart-wrenching and beautiful time of gathering. I'm aware that this is the opening session of our gathering and time together, and there's so many colleagues who, as Rabbi Jacobs mentioned, are together in the room for the first time. Maybe people you've been dreaming with and strategizing with and having Zoom calls and emails and WhatsApp threads. And even in the many ways that we have to connect across geographic distance, it's powerful to be together in person. So let's just take a moment, just like look around the room and see people, some of whom you know, some of whom you don't know, and just like give a smile to someone. There you go. We can just welcome each other in. So I'm here today as a child of the Reform movement. Yes, 10 summers at Osrui. All right. I think my nifty director, I think I saw over there. Nice to see you. EIE, all of the things. So that's really, at Osrui is really where I fell in love with Jewish tradition and community and ritual and what led me on my path of becoming a rabbi. As Esther mentioned, in this capacity, I support leaders in connecting to their inherent creativity as a Jewish practice for spiritual connection and social transformation. So I'm here to speak about the power and the necessity of creativity in times of crisis. And I just want to give some gratitude to everyone in this room who are building spaces, you're developing curriculum, you're nurturing leaders, you're shaping community, and you're giving of your time and your wisdom to make the kinds of experiences that I had possible, without which I wouldn't be here and wouldn't have become a rabbi. So I want to thank each and every one of you for all the ways that you care for and tend to our sacred tradition and help build our collective future. So give yourselves a hand. So I'll start with some framing remarks grounded in Torah on what exactly is creativity and why in times of crisis, when there are so many seemingly and actual urgent tasks before us, creativity is actually an essential capacity. A capacity that we must nurture and must draw upon to guide and sustain us. And then I'm going to invite us into a number of exercises, hands-on exercises using the materials in your bags to help us cultivate specific creative capacities as a practical and spiritual resource for our time in the conference, but also for the ongoing crises and challenges that we will be continuing to navigate in the days ahead. Does that sound okay? Okay. So let us begin at the beginning. Before there were worlds and wars, before there was division and separation, before person, animal, or land was distinguishable from any other, when we unfurl our sacred scroll, we start not with laws or rules, not with festivals or rituals, not even with lineage or family. The Torah opens, Bereshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created. With these three words, with God and the act of creativity, a beginning comes into being. God's first act is to create. Then, just a few verses later, we read that human beings are created b'tselem Elohim. Each one of us is made in the image of this divine creative force. Each one of us is created creative. And it is from this initial act of creativity that all else arises. The radiant sun and the glowing moon, the glittering oceans and the glistening dew, the sparkling stars and the serenading birds, sunflowers, sycamores, and us. It's through this initial act of creativity that all life as we know it comes to be. And it is through the ongoing act of creativity that life continues to evolve, to change, to complexify, and deepen. So that's the first point I want to offer, that creativity is a foundational attribute of the divine, is an inherent capacity within each of us, and that it is through creativity, both God's and ours, that the world is continually transformed and renewed. So what does creativity actually mean? And why does it matter for us today? I want to pick up where we left off in Torah to search for some clues together. In most interpretations of the story of creation, at least the ones I grew up hearing, it's that God created the world from nothing. Nothing existed, and then God, with divine power and vision, brought forth the world. This interpretation, we're told, proves how all-powerful God is and how distinct God's creativity is from our own. We, human beings, of course, cannot bring something into being out of thin air. Instead, we must work with the materials at our disposal to shape and to reshape the world. Yet, as close readers of text, we can see that, in fact, this may be true for God as well. When God began creating the world, we read, Ha'aretz hayta tohu vavohu, v'choshech al pnei tahom, v'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. The earth was chaos and void. There was darkness over the face of the depths, and a wind of God fluttered over the face of the waters. Rather than a meaningless description to be quickly read through so as to get to that which we know and recognize, the formation of light and plants and animals and humans, these verses offer us a key to how worlds actually come into being. And they offer us a profound and simple truth about what creativity is and how it functions. Each of us made in the image of the divine, we contemplate God's creative process to help us understand how creativity works in our lives. So quite the opposite of nothing, chaos, void, water, wind, and the depths, Torah says, all existed prior to creation. Rather than elide or erase the presence of these elements, we might instead see them as the raw materials for God's creative process. For God's creative process, and also for our own. We too contain chaos and void, darkness and depths. These elements exist both within and all around us. There could perhaps be no better pair of words more apt to describe the moment that we are living in right now. When we look back on times of chaos and void in our lives, with some distance and perspective, we see that it is precisely from these times, however challenging and unwelcome they may have been, that new beginnings arise. Something breaks, something falls apart, something shifts, something emerges. We're led to embark on a new path. We come to understand ourselves in a new way. We start a new season of our lives. The metaphorical elements of chaos and void, darkness and the depths, manifest in our lives in the form of all that is unclear, unresolved, nascent, conflictual, as of yet obscure. We learn from the divine's creative process that rather than something to avoid, to shun, or to overcome, something to rush over to get to something that's bright and shiny and clear, if we can stay with what's there, the questions, the confusion, the discomfort, we open the possibility for something else to arise. Something perhaps more complex and more beautiful than we ever could have imagined. This is how new worlds, new ways of seeing, being, and doing are forged. While the first verb in Torah is bara, create, the second verb is merachefet, to flutter or to hover. To begin the creative process, it is not that God made a plan, created a list, put everything in order before beginning. No, rather Torah teaches, God began just by coming into contact with what was there. Merachefet, to flutter or hover tremulously. So what might this mean? The only other place that Torah uses the verb rachaf in this form is where God is compared to a bird fluttering over its young. In the Hebrew dictionary, merachefet is related to being soft, to being moved, or to being affected. So I like to imagine the divine creator with love and with care coming into energetic relationship with what is before taking any decisive action to shift it into what should come next. We too, I think, would be well served to deepen our capacity for this merachefet action. Rather than immediately trying to change, resolve, or cover over the chaos and void, the darkness and the depths, all that we encounter both in ourselves and in the world, what if we could practice the act of merachefet, even if just for a brief time, rather than shun or steer clear of, come to see these elements more clearly, and perhaps even honor them for what they are and what they might have to teach. Despite what we may have been taught about what it means to be a leader, what it means to move with boldness and creativity, We don't have to know what comes next. In fact, we can't. We don't have to have it all worked out. Perhaps we just have to begin by letting ourselves rachaf, to, with tenderness and care, come into gentle contact with what exists around us and within us, the feelings, the questions, the struggle, the confusion, the longing, the grief, anything that's arising, and allow ourselves to be moved from there to the next right action. This waiting, this noticing rachaf space, Torah teaches, is a vital part of the creative process. As it was for God's creativity, it is also how we can come to know what is, the chaos, the void, the unclear, the unformed, and to bring it into the new world, the new beginning that's waiting to be born. As has been talked about at length already today, this is a tohu vavohu time. Collectively, we are living in a time of struggle and confusion and grief. There is so much in this world in need of transformation and change. Structures, systems, ideologies, beliefs, practices, pedagogies, the list goes on. We feel this within Judaism and within our own smaller communities too. So many of the things that may once have worked no longer do. They're crying out to be reimagined, to be reinvigorated, reassessed, and renewed, and all of the other words that are a part of this weekend. So celebrating 150 years of the URJ, this is the challenge and the blessing in this auspicious moment. You are here, each one of you, as Jewish leaders, lay, professional, clergy, seasoned, new, young, old. You're in this room because of your desire to commit to and create the next 150 years of the URJ. And you're here not only because of your passion and your love for tradition and practices and sacred texts inherited from those who came before you, not only to be loving stewards of these incredible gifts that you've been given, you're also here because of your imagination and vision, your empathy and your energy for what else might be. All the ways that you uniquely see to work with the challenges, the chaos and void that we face, and to transform it into its next form. Every morning we say in our liturgy, the divine is Mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh breshit, the one who renews each day, ongoingly, continuously, the works of creation. God, however you understand this animating force that is perhaps both within and beyond us, this creative force of the universe. And we, together, human beings made B'Tselem Elohim, we are partners in this ongoing work of creation. So each one of us gets to ask, what kind of society, what kind of community do we want to create? May we rise to meet this moment of the URJ at 150 and the questions and the struggles and the needs of our world. And may we rise to meet it with courage, with love, with empathy, with humility, and of course with creativity at the center of all that we do. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May it be so. Thank you. So you're probably wondering about the bags that have been given out, and I haven't talked about them yet. And I'm sorry there aren't snacks in them, that was mentioned. So you can use it throughout the weekend, though, to add snacks too and take it around. Now that we've looked a bit at what creativity is and why it's a foundational capacity to cultivate in these times of challenge and change, I'd like to spend the rest of our time together building some creative muscle. Each and every one of us is creative. It is endowed in us from the very beginning, yet throughout our lives, many of us encounter experiences that cut us off from this innate power. I would love a show of hands if you feel like you had an experience that harmed your connection to your creativity. Someone told you to put the paintbrush down, to mouth the words, to not put your thing on the wall. Yeah, okay. And everyone who isn't raising their hand, maybe you too. So whether by well-meaning adults or just by being in this culture that we grew up in, So many of us were taught that we're not creative, that it's for a special group, a special few, and that if we're not one of those deemed by society to be creative, then we'd better not risk venturing into this territory at all. And I'm here to say I strongly disagree. Susan Magsamen of the International Arts and Mind Lab at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine says that her research shows, quote, 20 minutes a day of art is as beneficial as getting enough exercise and sleep. Creativity is as foundational to what it means to be healthy, alive, and vibrant human being as breathing. It's core to our mental and physic and spiritual health, and it's something every one of us can actually practice, and it can even be fun. So I'm going to invite us into a few short exercises. Each one will be grounded in Jewish text to help us focus on what we at Jewish Studio Project call studio habits of mind. These are creative ways, creative capacities that we can cultivate through the use of art materials, but the point is not the art itself. We can think of it as cross-training through materials to build these capacities of self. Okay, are you ready? Are you with me? Okay. So we'll return back. Each one I'm going to frame with a little text, give a little framing. We'll do an exercise. We'll have music on, do an exercise, and then we'll talk about it. I'm actually going to ask for some participation and folks to share thoughts afterwards. So we're going to rewind back to that very beginning of beginnings where I started, Breshit bara Elohim. I'm going to translate it a different way this time. So often, as I first translated, it's read as in the beginning or as God began. But there's another way to kind of break down these words that I think is interesting. The bi of Breshit is with or by means of, right? And Reshit actually means first. So that word is this strange compound that's saying with or by means of the first, God created the world. And there's lots of beautiful rabbinic commentary that says, well, what does this actually mean? And in learning with one of my dear friends and colleagues, Rabbi B'nai Lappi of Sfari Yeshiva, we were learning this text, and she said, maybe it means like with the first way of seeing, with beginner's mind, God created the world. And I thought that was really beautiful. It's a radically different interpretation than when we may have been taught that there was some step-by-step plan. Perhaps it's rather that God, from beginner's mind, created the world. Beginner's mind is a concept from, called Shoshin from Zen Buddhism, and it means what? Beginner's mind. Yep. Curiosity, great. What's that? Yes, like a child. Curiosity, a childlike way of doing things, to approach something that we may consider known to us, and set our expectations or preconceived notions aside in order to rediscover it anew. And so just as God, we might imagine, starts the world from beginner's mind, we also can embrace a quality of openness and curiosity as we come into our work together. So here, I'm going to give you the prompt, and then we're going to put on music. And I want to ask and invite you, for the 4 minutes that the song plays, to not talk to each other, to actually just use that time with the music holding the space to do the exercise so that we have something to talk about on the other side. And for this exercise, I want to invite you to make an intention to bring beginner's mind to this experience and see where it leads you. So for the duration of the song, with any material that you'd like to use in the bag, I'm going to ask you just to make circles on the page. They don't have to be perfect circles. You can expand that invitation as far as you want. The basic instruction is to make circles on the page in any way that is pleasing to you. Keep going for the full amount of time, even if you think you're done, and then we're going to talk about what we learn. So we'll cue the song. You got the music back there? It's coming. Great. You can pretend like the music's on. It will come. Thank you to our tech. They're doing amazing. If you turn on this mic, I'll play it through here. We'll take another 2 minutes. Okay, beautiful. So we like to say, come to a comfortable or uncomfortable pausing place for now. And it's actually perfect that the music took a little while to come on because it gave us more time, which really lets us explore this topic a little bit more. Will you pause the music? Let's give it up for our tech team. Awesome, thank you so much. So now I want to ask all of us to kind of co-create some of the learning together. And I'm really curious, how did you choose to work with the materials for that amount of time? Did you get bored? What did you do with the emotions that arose? And then maybe if this exercise had anything to teach us about beginner's mind, what would it have to say? That's kind of a long time to just make circles with like a couple of markers and a colored pencil. So we have folks with mics, a couple on each side, and I'd really love to hear so we can kind of have some more voices in the room. What came up for you? How did you choose to work with the materials? And yeah, where did you go with this? Would someone be willing to start us off? I know it's a big room, but we want to hear your voice. Yeah. Great, and maybe just say your name.
Yeah, I'm Alan Leskold. Okay, I'm Alan Leskold from Pittsburgh, Rodef Shalom, and Temple Sinai congregations.
Awesome.
My initial thought was that circles had to do with inclusion, they had to do with overlapping, they had to do with connection. And so I started drawing concentric circles and overlapping circles and strings of circles and even the beginnings of a sort of a bracelet or tower of circles. But it was also meant to capture my sense that there's something about different ways of connection that circles could help us deal with.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah, over here.
Alan Shepard, Community Synagogue of Rye, New York. I ended up with interconnected. Try this one. Does this work better? Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Should I repeat? Alan Shepard, Community Synagogue of Rye, New York. I did interconnected circles. Each circle touches the next, actually interconnected. When I finished, I realized there was no, it sort of looked like a bracelet, but there was no clasp to open it up and put it on. But anyway, I thought of the interconnection, and halfway through the exercise, I realized, oh, whatever, fill in the blank there, that language, that I should have perhaps been a little more mindful of maybe having a different colors sequencing. Okay, but instead they ended up being rather random. But that was a learning exercise. Well, maybe next time.
Well, I love the more time you stay with it, the more ideas you get. And both of these first two comments are about the theme of interconnection. And I love just thinking back to where we started this talk about Breshit, before anything was separated, right? That's where, before it all began, we knew our interconnection with everything. And so I love that the circle's bringing that back, that theme. Thank you both. Yeah.
My name is Roban Robbie, and I'm from the Hebrew congregation of St. Thomas and the Virgin Islands. It's cold here. But I drew 9 circles, and within the circles, there are 4 circles within each circle. They were all separated, and I thought about them being the potential. The potential for these circles to be activated. I did not connect them. And in the beginner's mind, I was thinking about how we would connect them to make them work, to do something with them. And that has no script. It's just is, and we have to find that way.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah, right here. Do we have a mic that we can bring here so we can? One sec. Thank you.
I have to admit, Rabbi, at first I thought, oh, this is a kindergarten assignment again, and I'm 36 years old. Aaron Kaufman, Temple Micah from Washington, D.C., but in fact I found it, and I'm on the URJ board because Rick is looking at me. but I found it very soothing, actually. You know, life is very stressful, so to draw circles for 5 minutes was fun.
Yeah. Well, I just want to lift that up because that's not nothing. We're talking about kind of big concepts and ideas, but I think there are some childlike senses of play, and almost every Zoom that I'm on, especially if it's stressful, I'm like making circles on my thing. And so I just really want to lift up the way that art can be a form of emotional regulation at a time when many of us are activated in ways that we don't even know, and just how much harm that we can cause to each other when we're acting from a place of activation. So thank you for lifting up the power of just calming, soothing, coming back into ourselves from this. Let's take like 1 or 2 more on this, and we're going to do like 3 more, so we'll get more comments. You tell me where to go.
Yeah. Ann Myers from Waukesha, Wisconsin, Congregation Emmanuel. I first started out just drifting around with different colors, but then I started making actual designs, like a little smiley face of different sizes and so on. But then I began to realize these were cohesive shapes, and they made actual, designs. They could be functional things made up of different kinds of different, let's say, people. And I thought that was a good analogy for pulling in a lot of different people to make the congregation work better and not to leave anyone out.
Thanks for sharing that. I want to take one more, and I would love if someone could speak to the theme also. These are all beautiful comments of if anything came up for you around beginner's mind, right? You're doing the same shape again and again for like, maybe that was 7 minutes. I don't know, it could be super boring, and I'm just really curious. Where did the beginner's mind go? Yeah.
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Andy Cohen from Northern Virginia Hebrew Congregation in Reston, Virginia, about 20 miles east of here.
Nice.
West. Thank you. In what I think was the spirit of the exercise, I just started drawing circles without an idea of what it was I wanted to do with them.
Yeah.
And it seemed to become important to me to fill in the open spaces and to have them touching each other.
Yeah.
And then I just kept doing that, sort of, I didn't know if I was trying to reach the edge of the paper, but it was, I agree with others, it was very soothing, but also about connection.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks, everybody. And I love that some folks, it sounds like, went in with an idea in mind, and then you were creating that from the circles, and then what you were creating started to speak to you and tell you something else, and you went in with no concept at all and letting it emerge. So I think both of those are so beautiful. Okay, we're going to do a couple more. Are you ready to do a few more? Okay, you can go on top of what you just did. You can flip the page however you want to put it into quadrants because you're like really type A. You can do anything you want on the page. I've worked with a lot of Jewish professionals, and there's a lot of type A. So the next concept I want to talk about that we touched on at the beginning is this idea of B'Tselem Elohim, this idea of us being made in the image of the divine creative force, and every single one of us being endowed with creativity simply by being human beings. It's not something we need to get a degree in or earn or have someone else tell us we are. We are creative, and it is an innate power and capacity that we have. And I was thinking about the Midrash, the rabbinic teaching, that when God created human beings, God created us all with the same stamp, right? But each of us came out differently. There's the same seal, the same stamp, but every single one of us is unique. So we're like this too, right? Though we might all have the same materials pretty much in our bags, doing the same exercise, something different inherently will come out on the other side. So for this exercise, I want to just have us put ourselves onto the page. I'm going to give us 2 invitations for that, and you can do both or either or make up your own. One is to trace some parts of your finger or hand onto the page. You can do repetitive, you can do it once, however you want to do it. Or you can use the ink of the marker if you're okay with getting a little dirty and actually stamp yourself onto the page. Does that make sense as an invitation? We'll have 3 minutes here. The music is going to go on. They're ready for us. I know they've got it. And you can see the prompt up there. Put yourself onto the page, either tracing some parts of your hand or stamping literally with ink onto the page. There- Okay, so find that comfortable or uncomfortable pausing place for now. Just take a moment to kind of see what came through. What did you do on your page? Maybe show it to the person next to you. And then I'd love to ask, what did you do and what came up? And I want to point out, right, like we're tracing our hands like probably all of us did in kindergarten, or we're like stamping ourselves. These are things that preschoolers maybe do. I asked them to turn to each other. It's my own fault. And I want to ask, what if we were to see this experience or what came through on the page as a text here to teach us something about being creative, what might it have to say? So we have folks with microphones, and I know we want to get to some of the folks in the back. I can't see anything, so if folks with the microphones could go, thank you for your service. And
I'm Doug Cohn. I'm rabbi at Temple Beth Jacob in Newburgh, New York.
awesome.
I'm ambidextrous, so I decided to use my non-dominant hand
Nice.
and remind myself that there's parts of me I don't usually experience.
Yeah.
And it was thrilling. It was really neat to draw with the other hand and to see that I found me again, another part of me. Thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. And whether we're ambidextrous or not, I think just the idea of using our non-dominant, right? We're trying to build a world that is not classified by domination. So what if we try using our non-dominant hand, ways of thinking, ways of knowing in some of the brainstorming that we're doing for these next 150 years of the future. So thank you for inviting that in.
Hi, I'm Susan Bayer from Rudolph Shalom. Susan Bayer from Rudolph Shalom in Philadelphia, and one key thing I noticed is I repeated and repeated, everything is intertwined and connected.
Yes.
And then I also did my non-dominant hand, which was very difficult. It made me think a lot harder about what I was actually doing.
Yeah. Right, it had to really slow you down. Thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. Beautiful. We'll take a couple more. Yeah, just stand up or, yes, great.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm Rabbi Melody Davis from Temple Beth Israel in York, Pennsylvania. And I thought I was starting with a concept of just using the tip of my index finger. And since I'm born on Valentine's Day, I thought, okay, I'm going to add love to the world and do hearts. But what happened was I just kept overlapping and then different colors. And I realized this is transformation. These are different colors that are blending one into the other. And there's my message is, you can change.
Beautiful, and beautiful the way you let your idea evolve and change. Thanks for sharing that. Hi.
Hi, I'm Don Leibowitz from Congregation Bethlehem in Princeton Junction, New Jersey. I just did freeform because I don't always like following directions, and if you want to be creative, you can't always follow directions.
Great. How did that feel for you?
It was fun.
Good. I think a lot of times with creativity, even if we are following the directions, we put a lot more rules on us than we're given, right? Like the circles have to be perfect, or can I use this, or am I allowed to do that? And so just want to invite us to notice when we're putting more rules on ourselves than we're actually given in this exercise, but also just in our lives. And yeah, how much more freedom we may have than what we thought we had to plan the program or to envision the staff retreat or whatever else we might be working on. All right, let's take one or two more. Yeah, back there.
I actually drew I'm starting to lose the ability to grasp with my thumb because I'm getting older. And so I drew all around the edges of the page, I drew my thumb. And then I thought, that's a bad thing about getting older. And I thought, well, what are good things? So I wrote, no longer grasping at straws, no longer grasping for approval, no longer grasping the bull by the horns. Screw the bull.
Amen. Thank you. Is there a mic? There's some hands up here. Okay, yeah, great.
I'm Mark Dressner from Temple Israel in Long Beach, California. And I thought most people were going to do their hands or their fingers, and I didn't want to be constrained to just that. So I did try to do my chin and my nose and my elbow and I think a fist. So I think it's trying to take the rules and go further with it.
Perfect.
And actually then at the end it kind of looks like a game board, like, I don't know, Settlers of Catan or something, so, which is really kind of cool.
Perfect, I love that. One more maybe? Anyone with the mic? There's a bunch of hands.
Hi, I'm Kathy Niederman. I can't. Temple Beth David in Westminster, California. And I wanted to put my whole hand on the paper, and after I picked it up from drawing around it, or as I started to do that, I realized it was looking like a hamster, so that's what I turned it into.
Nice. Thank you. Beautiful. And how many people stamped their hands, like actually got the ink dirty? Yeah. Accidentally, great. I was just thinking as we were doing it how, our fingerprints are literally this unique seal. If we are all stamped with the same stamp, our fingerprints are literally the uniqueness that comes out of that. And how often fingerprints are used for something maybe not so good, but it's the unique imprint of who we are. So to get to reclaim that and reclaim that as a sense of creativity feels powerful. So thank you. Okay, we're gonna do two more. And just want to, are you ready? Tohu vavohu, a little chaos and void. So as we talked about before, right, there were these elements that existed when God began God's creative process. There was this pair of elements, tohu vavohu, chaos and void, that were there that were eventually transformed into what we now know as the world. And we talked at the beginning about how creativity is the way that we work with these elements, metaphorical, literal, and transform them into the world, into the future that we seek. So I want to invite us to create a little chaos and void on our page and then work with it, see what we do. So here's the invitation. In a moment, the song will go on, and I want to invite you to use any material that you like and to close your eyes and just like, almost like a squiggle, just like move your implement haphazardly around the page, basically, for like a few seconds. And then when you're ready, you'll open your eyes and see what's there. Notice how it feels to see what's there, and then decide how you want to work with it in any way that's pleasing to you. Does that make sense as a prompt? Okay, we'll put the music on, we'll have a couple of minutes, start with that closing eyes, and then see how you want to work with it. We got our song back there. Okay, so find that pausing place for now. So we just engaged in an exercise where we closed our eyes. We created chaos on the page in front of us. Then we opened our eyes to see what was there and then decided how we were going to work with that. So I'm curious, what did it feel like to create the chaos? Were you resistant? Did it feel freeing? And what happened when you opened your eyes, and how did you decide to work with it? Hi.
Hi, I'm Sarah Kittinger from Congregation Beth Emeth in Wilmington, Delaware. There's all four of us. So I started with just kind of squiggly waves, and then once the beat of the music was flowing, I just kind of went with that and went with that and went with that. And in the end, I just ended up with a full canvas of all the colors of the pencils that I was given. So it was really inspiring. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Just want to lift up, we had such beautiful music to start off and to punctuate this event, and just how powerful music and other things can be that interrupt the intellectual, cognitive mind in the way that we think and allow us to kind of access that flow state that you were speaking about. So thank you for lifting that up.
Hi, I'm Anthea Cohen from Piscataway, New Jersey, and I found this very difficult. I'm an engineer. And to close my eyes and to have to draw without a purpose was very difficult. And so when I open my eyes, I'm trying to make sense of it by coloring everything in.
Yeah.
So it was hard.
Well, way to stretch yourself. Thank you for sharing that.
Can we just have one more?
Yeah, go for it. Mm-hmm.
I'm Brian Cohen, no relation, from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I drew my little picture. And I got to looking at it, and I put eyes and a mouth on it because it reminded me of the days when I had an afro back in high school.
Hi, over to the left. To the left.
Hey.
Hi, Jeffrey Kagan, Temple Emmanuel, Westfield, New Jersey, and Creative Arts Academy. Thank you. The chaos part ended up looking like a lot of the art that I create. But then the drawing looked a lot like a sunset to me, which sort of is, every sunset feels very unique to me. Yeah. And so I sort of went with that and created something that looks a lot better than where I started.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
We'll take a couple more, and I'm really curious if there's anything that this could lift up for you, right? We've talked about how this moment is one of chaos and void, and chaos and void really are a constant part of our lives, that we're constantly working with these elements and working with what's unclear or out of sync and trying to transform it. So I'm curious if this exercise gave you any insight that could help illuminate the path forward for all of us of how we might work with those elements. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Liz Cohen, also no relation to the other Cohen, except we're all one family, right? Anyway, I'm from Temple Bethel in Hillsborough, and I have always considered myself more of a dancer than an artist. When you talk about censoring, it's always been self-censoring. So when the music came on, I just danced my hand to the music. And it was really quite remarkable to be able to just have a record of my dance.
Yay, thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Louis Goldman, Congregation Beth Jacob, from Plymouth, Massachusetts, America's hometown. And as I was doing this, it just makes me think of the first two examples we did before, all about circle of life. All it is a group of elliptical circles keep going in different shapes and sizes. They're all the same building blocks. The only thing that changes is how it's applied.
We can think about that, right? With the chaos and void that we're facing, it's the same and it's different, right? It's like Spirillic, and we're encountering it. We're new, the world is new. It's new but different, and how do we encounter it each time anew? Let's take like one or two more, and then we're going to move to close.
Hi, Mark Landis from Congregation Road of Shalom in New York.
Hi.
Number one, I think all these Cohens are actually related to one another, and probably to everyone else in the room. This is the first of the assignments that fell into my comfort zone, because drawing is not my comfort zone. So closing my eyes and drawing randomly was a very good place for me to start. and finding from there that, for lack of a better way of putting it, I had a chaotic blob, and yet I felt that in that blob there was light coming out of it, and then created a set of rays, sometimes single strand, sometimes double or triple strand, to illustrate how I was feeling.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just want to lift up, because we had someone here saying it was really out of their comfort zone, right? You were sharing, and you said this felt more in your comfort zone because it was like you could close your eyes and who knew it was going to come out. So just want to lift up how amazing it is to be a part of a bigger community where each of us have our comfort zones and how we can tap into and lift up the areas of comfort for each of us, as well as challenge each other out of our comfort zones. But let the person who's down to create some chaos do that, and then let the person who's really comfortable creating order come in and do that, right? The work takes all of us and all of our different capacities. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Andrew Mandel. I'm from Central Synagogue in New York City. And I appreciate the habit of mind that I realized I was cultivating as I looked at my squiggles, and I generated a list of possibilities of what I might be seeing. I saw I saw threads entangled. I saw hair in need of a dye job. I saw the pathways of two pets. And then I realized I saw two people holding each other. And it took some time to see that. So I realized I needed to allow myself to be generative and to be patient for what I think was the most precious thing to emerge.
Beautiful, amen. Thank you so much. I always think about in Breshit, in Genesis, right? There's so much naming that happens. And I always wonder if the naming happened too soon, and that's what led to the flood, that there was like too quick to decide what this is and what it's going to be called. And so I really appreciate you lifting up, elongating the time before deciding this is this and this is what it means, and generating that list of possibilities. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to our last exercise, and then we're going to close together. Thank you all for participating, and I've never done this with 700 or 800 people, so I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the wisdom that you're sharing. So at the end of each day of creation, God says this refrain, Ki Tov, and it was good. Or at the end, Ki Tov Ma'od, and it was very good. And I just wanted to lift up the studio habit of mind of pausing and appreciating. And in the text, God doesn't wait till the very end, till everything's finalized and done and everything's been checked off to say Ki Tov, right? It happens actually throughout the process. At the end of each day, and then there's a new day and new things are made. So I think often in our lives we don't give ourselves, I can speak for myself, the chance to pause and to rest until everything is finally done, and of course that never happens. And that we don't give ourselves a chance to appreciate what is, even when it is still a work in progress. So perhaps we can invite ourselves to say these moments of pause and appreciation don't need to be saved for the end when everything is done, but can occur throughout. And also to maybe re-understand what the word tov means, what good means. Because again, in Genesis, it didn't mean done or perfect or complete, but like good, I think, in the sense of this came through the creative process, and so it's good, and it's going to continue to evolve and change, and that's good too. So inviting ourselves into more chances to pause, to appreciate, and to find the good along the way, even when, especially when we're still in process. So for this final prompt, I want to give us one last song to work with the materials on the page until it feels like a place of Ki Tov for now. It feels good for now. So something you haven't yet felt like you were able to do because of the constraints of the prompt, or something that's now calling out to you. And then I think I would like to try to collect all the pieces, if we could, and put them all down in the center aisle, and maybe we could get the camera on it, and we could do a final witnessing of all the pieces that came through us. So final song, Ki Tov, work with your materials, and whatever comes through you is good, and just let yourself play for the last few minutes. Ki Tov. So find that comfortable or uncomfortable pausing place for now. And I just want to point out how radical it is to be in a group of adults and to play with art materials on a Friday afternoon in a group of hundreds of adults. So give yourselves a hand for that. That's a radical act. To let yourselves be nurtured to play, to experiment, and to not be expecting yourself to create some sort of masterpiece that needs to be shown to other people on the other side. This is what I want to do to close. I'd like everyone, if you're willing, if you're not willing, you can hang on to your piece, to pass your sheets into like the aisle of your row. And then if we could have folks with the microphones help me, I'm sorry I didn't prepare you for this. I would love to lay them out on the center here, and maybe the cameras can shine on them, and we can see the culmination of everyone's pieces together. Does that make sense? So pass them into the aisle, if you're willing. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. And is it possible for the cameras to point on them at some point? That will be right. Perfect. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, I'll take your attention for the last couple minutes and we're going to close together. A huge thank you to everyone who collected and is putting down the pieces. So we have the camera looking at them. I know you can't see that closely, but we have folks who are close and able to see the pieces on the ground. So I want to ask us just in these final closing minutes, for those who can sort of see what's here, if we were to look at the amalgam of pieces of paper and what's come out on them, and we were to say that this was our text on what creativity is, what might it have to say? If this were a text on what creativity is, what might it have to say? I heard multi-directional, yeah? Scary? Varied, multi-directional, varied. Better together, messy, colorful. What else? True? Beautiful. The sum is greater than the parts. Beautiful. God what? Diamonds in the rough. This and this, from chaos, beauty. Asymmetric. A flowing river. Say it again. Diverse. Limitless. Say it again. Beautiful. So I want to lift all of those up as sort of leading us into our final closing prayer. Again, this gathering is both marking the 150th celebration and it's also opening on to the next 150 years. So may this gathering and may each of you feel blessed to know the inherent creativity that exists within you. May you be blessed to know the diversity and the multi-directionality and the variedness and the this and this of what exists. And may you be blessed to know, as Rabbi Jacob so beautifully said, that we're better together, right? Each one is its own thing, but when it comes together as a whole, it is much more beautiful. And I want to close with the blessing in your bag, just because we gave it to you. It's a blessing that we wrote at Jewish Studio Project to bless the creative process, and so I'll just close with that. Feel free to make it with me or to say amen. Baruch atah Adonai, mikor hachayim, shebara otanu b'tzalmo, umazmin otanu lechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh breshit. Baruch atah Adonai, yotzer yitzirim. Blessed are you, source of life, who creates us in your image and invites us each and every day to renew the work of creation. Blessed is the one who created each and every one of us creative. Thank you all so much.